It's 1943. Lockheed Martin, a US defense company, their chief engineer, Clarence Johnson, fields a call from the US Department of Defense. German airplanes are appearing over Europe, and they are in an impossible situation. They want to create a counterpunch to these German planes hovering over Europe. It's an impossible mission, an unbelievably critical mission with a tight time frame. And Clarence Johnson's job in his division at Lockheed Martin is to create the United States' first military jet in 1943. However, just 143 days later, a staggeringly short time, and more impressively, 7 days before the deadline, they deliver America's first military jet. Now, if we look back at this case study, it's not because their goal was to deliver a plane in record time. That wasn't the goal, because if you think about that as a goal, it's not something that really inspires you, just to deliver something within a deadline. The vision they had that allowed them to deliver this first military jet in the deadline and ahead of schedule was this: we are going to rid the world of Nazi peril. That was their vision. And now vision comes into two concepts. We can dissect it two ways. The first is for yourself. What I mean by yourself is, what is your vision? What is the vision of what you're working towards? And now vision is easy. You can probably relate to it. Everyone begins the year with a New Year's resolution. Everyone kind of wants to start an amazing business or get an incredible idea out there. But vision alone means nothing. Ideas are cheap now. It's what is your emotional connection to it? How are you connected to that idea that you're working on, that vision? Because that reason is what's going to compel you through those difficult times as an entrepreneur. And we're all going to experience obstacles, challenges, and setbacks. But it's understanding what that vision is for you. I remember when I first started my journey, I sat down, got a blank sheet of paper, and I wrote down 100 reasons why it was important for me to start this journey, why it was important for me to get to where I wanted to be, to who I wanted to be. And the reason why I did this exercise was because the more reasons you have, the greater the why, the easier the how. You get more connected to that journey. The second part of the vision is, yes, you might have an idea. You might, in your eyes, think it's the greatest idea, the greatest invention, the greatest service that everyone should be using. But it doesn't matter if you can't communicate that to other people. So it's how do you articulate your vision to other people as well? Because that's what people buy into. People don't buy what you do, your products, your service. People buy why you do it. Because if you can't communicate why you're doing something, then it's very difficult for people to separate you from the competition. And when people can't separate you from the competition, you're going to end up competing on price. And trust me, no one wants to be the Lidl or the Walmart of their industry. So you've got to understand and tap into your vision. How can you create a differential from what you deliver to other people, but also understanding your own vision, because everything begins with a vision and the seed of an idea, the seed of your imagination there. Now you've heard of Apple. I see a lot of people using MacBooks these days. If we go back to Apple's history, there was a moment when Steve Jobs convinced, at the time, Pepsi CEO John Scully to quit as CEO of Pepsi and come to Apple to be the CEO. And John Scully said it only took him 10 minutes to be convinced. Why? Because Steve Jobs was able to communicate his vision, his why. Why does he want John Scully to come to Apple? He said to John Scully the following: John, you can go through the rest of your life selling sugared water to people, Pepsi, which is what he was selling, or you can join us and change the world forever. That was his vision. He then went on to explain how he was going to change the world, his beliefs. When Google first presented to get investors into their product, they said to the investors, this is what we're about, this is why we're doing what we're doing. It's because we want to bring the world's information to you in one click. They could summarize that vision in such a simple way that people could get it. So this vision is one component if you're committed to being a successful entrepreneur. Now, it's also about the mindset. Yeah, the mindset is one of the most powerful parts of the jigsaw in being successful in any field. So we've talked about the vision, we've talked about the importance of understanding why you're doing what you're doing. What is your personal connection to it? Now, the first of three parts of the mindset is commitment. You know, most people these days, they're interested in starting something, interested in doing an idea, interested in bettering themselves in some way. But here's the thing, when you're only interested, then how can you put your full conviction into something? So there's a big difference between interest and commitment. Because when you're committed to something, you're telling your mind, this is hell yes. I'm fully invested in this, now it's how are we going to do it? I'm committed to this for these reasons, which ties into the vision. Now how are we going to do it? That's when you access the creativity part. And that creativity as an entrepreneur is going to be one of your greatest assets. You know, I say to people who start, and a lot of people complain they have no money to market, but actually, in my view, that's the best position to be in when you have no money for marketing. Because imagine this scenario, someone gives you $500 million marketing spend as your budget. Now, most likely what's going to happen is you'll probably waste it, which a lot of companies these days do when they have that big of a budget. So you probably hire the best agency, you hire the best marketing team, you hire advisors everywhere, and before you know it, all that money's gone. But actually, when you're really committed to something, when you see the potential of something, the vision again, what it could be, the possibilities of what you're creating, that's when you start to access your creativity. That's when you kind of think, how can we create something that people want to talk about by using lateral thinking, leveraging lateral thinking. It's what businesses are doing these days to accelerate their growth. Business before would have had to take 5, 6, 7 years to get to multiple millions. People are doing it in a matter of years now. 1 year, months now, people are getting to where they want to get to. And it's understanding how do you create, talk, buzz through your product and service. And also learning from other industries. Because if you're only looking at your competition, guess what? You can only be as good as your competition. So it's how can you learn from other industries? Now the second part of the mindset is persistence. Now what I mean by persistence is guaranteed you are going to have some setbacks, you're going to fail, and you're going to have some challenges as you develop these ideas, as you get yourself out there. This is a new experience for most people starting a business. Now because it's new, it comes with the territory that a lot of the things you're going to be doing will be for the first time. But actually, failure can be life's greatest teacher. Because it's through the doing, it's through the execution. Remember, ideas are cheap, it's the execution where the power is at. Your ability to execute and get real-time feedback from what you're putting out there, that allows you to learn quick, adapt, refine, and take your idea forward. Think about when you download apps on your smartphones. When you download the first iteration of an app, most likely it's buggy. There's issues with it. And so you might be rating it 2 stars, 3 stars, and saying this not work, this isn't working, that isn't working. They take that and they update your app. You get version 2, you get version 3, you get version 4, and it keeps updating. That is the team behind that app learning from their mistakes. They're getting out quicker and to learn from that. So it's that ability to bounce back from failure, because if you think about it at the end of the day, for me, in my experience, there is no issue with failure, setbacks, and obstacles. Because what matters in the grand scheme of things is how you see it, how you interpret it, and how you react to it. Now, the third part of the mindset is consistency. Consistency is key to being successful in any field. And I think a good way to explain this is through an analogy. Now, if I gave you 2 options. So the first option is, I'll give you £1 million right now, hard cash. Okay, that's option 1. Option 2 is I'll give you 1 penny, a rusty copper 1 penny coin, and I'll double that every day for 31 days. Gut feel, who goes for option 1, raise your hands. £1 million cash right now. Okay, a couple of people. So it's £1 million in your cash banked in your account. Now let's look at the 1 penny example. The 1 penny doubling every day for 31 days. Now if you map it out, if you're sort of good with Excel, you want to map out how this works, you'll notice that it's flat for a while. It's an incremental increase. But as you get closer to the 31st day, what you finish with is over £10.7 million. What this illustrates is the power of compounding. Consistency of your habits, of your execution, of getting yourself out there, testing things. That compounds over time rather than just getting given it straight away. So that's what I mean by consistency, because it's not what you do once in a while that's really going to make a difference, but it's what you do daily, every day. It's those habitual daily rituals that really make the difference long term. So that's the vision, that's the mindset. And the third area which is important for any entrepreneur's journey is environment. Environment because of the energy. You know, there's a great statement a mentor of mine once said. He said, if you want to be the healthiest individual you've ever been, hang around with 5 of the fittest people you know, and in no time you'll be the 6th. If you want to be a successful entrepreneur, hang around with 5 of the most inspiring entrepreneurs you know, and in no time you'll be the 6th. Because what this touches on is the power of your subconscious. When you are exposed to certain environments, you can't help but take on some of their thinking, some of their energies. And that's why environment is so important. So imagine what you read, who you listen to. Not just physically now, like in this room here, you're surrounded by like-minded people who want to change the world, who want to have an impact socially on the world, but online as well, who you follow. What do you read online? What do you watch online? All of this has a massive impact on the way you think. Why that's important? Because you win in the mind before you win in reality. It's all a mental game in business. It's a lot that goes on here that determines what goes on the outside. Because your beliefs in here, how you talk to yourself, which is the most powerful dialogue you will have in your lifetime, because you are the person you're going to speak to most in your lifetime. That drives what action you take out here. A great example to illustrate this is Usain Bolt. Do you know Usain Bolt? Greatest 100-meter sprinter of all time, record breaker. He's retired from athletics now. But here's what he said in his final conference, his final press conference. He was reminiscing on his time as a young athlete before he started taking part in the World Championships. And a reporter asked him, what was your thinking process? How were you preparing for the World Championships? How was your mind like before you won your first gold medal, before you broke the 10-second barrier? And he said, I learned something from another athlete. Again, not in my industry, but a different industry. I learned something from Muhammad Ali, which was the power of the mind and the way you see yourself. And he woke up one morning, and he said, I took on the mindset of this. I had to act, think, walk, and talk as if I had already broke the world records. I had already won the gold medal. Because that was the only way that I could eventually do that. So by acting, walking, talking, and behaving as if he was already a world record breaker gold medalist, he started to embrace the habits. It became not doing something, but it became an identity. I am a world record breaker. In the same way Muhammad Ali said, I am the greatest. Because when you see yourself as the greatest or a successful entrepreneur, then guess what? Your choices are made. People give you choices every day. If you're coming from the point of view that I am this person as an identity, then your choice is already made. And that's the power of how you see yourself up here and how it translates outside in reality. Now the question I want to leave you with before opening up to some questions and answers is this. What choices, habits, and rituals would you embrace today if you were already the person you would like to be tomorrow? So again, just to reflect on that question today, what choices, habits, and rituals would you embrace today if you were already the person you would like to be tomorrow? Because it's looking and visualizing the possibilities with your future self that creates that bridge for you to go forward in, but also motivates and inspires you intrinsically to take the necessary actions today. Fantastic. So I'm going to pause there for a moment and perhaps open up for any questions you might have, given you've got your presentation on Friday. that I can help you with. Questions, thoughts, marketing, pitching? I'll share with you one idea maybe to get you started there. When you are pitching to people, when you are marketing, you've got to understand the journey you're taking these audiences and customers on. You've got to be able to identify a pain and what is your pleasure. The greater the gap between the pain and the pleasure, the easier it is for you to be positioned as that solution. Let's think about it this way. Raise your hand if you hate dentists, if you don't like going to the dentist. So the rest of you enjoy dentists? No? Now, most people don't like going to dentists. Why? Because of needles, because of injections, because of the sound of being in a dentist clinic. That is a pain that people can relate to. Now imagine if I was to set up a business, and this was my pleasure to people who could relate to that. So my business is, I'm going to open a dentist clinic, and I guarantee you, 100% guarantee, painless tooth extractions. Think how many people who had that fear of dentists will now line up outside my door and want painless tooth extractions. That's the idea of pain to pleasure. Another example in the tech world, if you look at Citymapper, do you have Citymapper on your phone? Now when Citymapper first launched, they understood the pain is if I go to a new city, well, I don't know the quickest route to get from A to B. So if I plug in 2 postcodes, well, within a few seconds, I've got multiple combinations of ways I can go from A to B. That was the pleasure that they're bringing. So it's understanding what is the pain that you are focusing on, what are you addressing in your idea, and what is the pleasure that you're bringing. Now, if you've ever seen Steve Jobs' keynotes at Apple when he was alive, there's some great examples of how he tapped into that. He would always create a pain in your mind, and the Apple product would be the solution. Because once you establish a pain with your audience, your potential customers, you create an emotional desire in their mind to need your product, to need your service. If there's no pain that you're addressing, well, why do I need to buy your service? Why do I need to subscribe to what you're providing? So how can you take that journey in your presentations of addressing a pain and delivering yourself, position yourself as a solution? Fantastic. I'll pause there. I can answer any questions individually as teams, if you're too shy to put hands up now. But I hope that's been helpful, insightful for you going forward. Thank you very much.